Hey, this is Randy Hunt, and welcome here to our little podcast today. I am a realtor with West Virginia Mountaineer Real Estate, and this is my partner.
Hey, I'm Josh Harold, Associate Broker and Realtor here at West Virginia Mountaineer Real Estate.
Hey, we want to come to you this week. August 17th on the horizon. I don't know if you've read in the paper, you've seen it on the news, or you've just heard people talk about some changes in real estate and how we do business, particularly our agency. And their NAR was involved in a lawsuit with the DOJ this past year. Not going to get into details of that, but long story short, transparency was the big issue, particularly with buyers. And so there's been a change. But before we get into that, just quickly, historically, Josh and I have been doing this for a while. And actually, I got my first license in 1984, Josh. So I've known about this business for a long time. This is my second go around. But so traditionally, what has happened is we sign an agreement with a seller to sell their house for X amount of dollars or X percentage of the sale, and that's how we get compensated for what we do. And traditionally, that compensation is split between the buying broker and the selling broker, and then they split that with us. So that's how we all get paid, and that's how it's always happened. After this DOJ case, there was an argument that buyers were not getting the proper representation. So now we are at a point where things have changed, Josh.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell us, as far as the buyers,
Okay.
what's going on here on August 18th?
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
Okay. So, like you were saying, historically, the way things have been, if you're a buyer under the old way, you would call me as a buyer's agent, and you would say, "Hey, I would like to see this house." I would then set the appointment, meet you there, and we go through the house and talk about it. But August 17th is the big change.
Yeah.
And what it's going to do is now, under the new system, and this is a policy change that is effective for everyone, right? This is not just a West Virginia policy. This is not just a Beckley Board of Realtor policy. This is a policy that's in effect for every jurisdiction, every state in our country that are members of the National Association of Realtors. So you are a buyer and you want to see a property. What we're going to have to do before I can show you the house or meet you there and talk numbers or anything, we have to sign what we call a buyer's agency agreement. And what this does, it kind of gives us an outline of the general properties you're searching for, and some of those more fine details, which we will go over there whenever you decide you want my representation. But primarily, what this form is to establish transparency between compensation between the selling brokerage and the listing brokerage. Now we have to have a contract in place, an agreement in place, that if we're unsuccessful in trying to negotiate the buyer's agent's compensation to be paid at closing via seller credit, that we are still going to get compensated, and you, the buyer, is ultimately responsible. But again, what we're going to try to do, we're going to try the best of our ability, is get you a seller credit for you as a buyer to pay for adequate and proper buyer's representation.
So you and the buyer are going to establish a relationship that we've never had before.
Yeah.
A contractual relationship.
It's a contractual relationship and not just implied, because it was implied all these years, and now we're actually going to have our contractual relationships 2 pages long, and there's some details to that, in which we won't go into that right now. But yeah, it's going to be we're kind of going to be like dating, if you will.
Right. So we've always had that with our listing.
Exactly.
We've had an agreement with our sellers that we have a relationship, we have a contract, and now buyers are going to have a contract with their agent. It's going to be it's going to solidify that relationship because like a seller has an agreement, the seller can't go to another agent and say, I want you to sell my house, because they can't, because we have that agency. So it is going to kind of nail you down. Now, these agreements can be short-term, long-term.
That's right. Yeah.
They can be very specific. They can be very broad, right?
That's right.
And that's negotiable.
And that's the biggest thing to highlight here. And we're going to underline transparency and commission. Commissions have always been negotiable. And we here at West Virginia Mountaineer Real Estate, for the last several years, we've advertised that extensively, that commissions are negotiable.
Right.
They are not set in stone. Now it's an agreement, and we negotiate these things, and that's certainly true for the list side, but it's also true for the buyer's agency agreements as well.
So you've got a buyer, and they found a house they like.
Yes.
Hopefully it's my house, Josh.
Right.
So they find one of my houses and they love that house.
Yeah.
And now you're going to bring me an offer.
Okay.
And that offer is going to include a wish list? Kind of?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is what we're going to hope for to see, that's in the best interest of the buyer, because whenever we have this contractual exclusive buyer's agency agreement, what we've established is not an implied agency now. We have a contractual agency, and I work with a fiduciary responsibility to my sellers to get my sellers, my buyers, the absolute best deal possible, opposed to you working for the seller. You try and you have a fiduciary duty, to do the best by your seller.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is marry that. So going back to the seller credit, a lot of our offers moving forward are going to have language in there that's going to try to get the seller to give a buyer a credit in order for the buyer to pay for their buyer's representation.
And so asking the seller to give the buyer a credit at closing,
right?
That's not unusual.
No.
I mean, honestly, we've done that for years.
Oh yeah,
and
many times.
And it's quite often that buyers, they can't afford part of their closing costs. So it's very common for us to ask sellers to help with closing costs.
Absolutely.
And traditionally, sellers have paid that commission out of their proceeds anyway. So what you're saying is the more things have changing, they might be staying a little bit of the same.
Yeah, the numbers aren't honestly going to change an awful lot.
Right.
The numbers, if you look historically and now moving forward, I feel like we're going to be really close to what we've always been. And just to your point, it costs a buyer a lot. They spend a lot of money on a lot of different things throughout the transaction. You're talking appraisals, you're talking inspections, and not only that, lenders require a buyer to have a certain amount of reserves in there. So just because they have the money in their bank account may not necessarily mean that they can use every bit of it. So having a seller credit certainly helps, and a huge portion of all closed transactions have some form of seller credit.
Yeah, because again, buyers, as we've discussed, when I first got back into this about 11 years ago, the average, I used to see $3,000 to $5,000 in closing costs for my buyers, and that number is now up between $5,000 and $12,000.
Yeah.
So buyers are already being stuck with a lot of money to come up to the table with, and so asking sellers to help them pay that commission right now is going to be a common thing.
Absolutely.
In order for them to buy a house.
Exactly.
And
exactly. Yeah. If not, I mean, it limits really your buyer pool.
Right.
To
So the big thing on the buyer side is they got an agency agreement now.
That's right.
That's not just this office.
That's right.
So
Nationwide.
if you come to Josh and Josh says, sorry, I can't sell you a house until you sign this buyer agency, and you're like, well, I'm going to go call so and so. So and so is going to have that same buyer agency.
Exactly.
We all will have that buyer agency agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't have if they don't have a buyer agency, they're probably going to get in trouble.
Exactly.
We're not going to get in trouble.
No.
We're well aware of what we need to do to stay within.
Well, look how many years we've been in this, and our office has never had a real estate commission file against us.
Right, exactly. So I want to talk about from the listing side. So that's a huge change for buyers. Sellers, there's slight change.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of alluded to that a minute ago. They're going to be probably asked to buy that to compensate the buyer's agency to help them pay that the buyer's agency commission.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things on our job as far as representing sellers now, it's very little change except some wording in our listing agreement. But the things that's going to really stand out is this listing agreement is between my seller and my brokerage. It's not necessarily set out to represent the buyer or the buyer's agency or anything like that. So we have always had a compensation for what we do. Obviously, we got to get paid for the services we render, but our new agreements, we're going to have options on how we compensate and options and what the sellers can do, willing to do. The obvious thing is the seller's going to have an agreement to compensate me personally, and that's going to be written in there, and we're going to negotiate that compensation amount as we agree upon. And then we're going to have the options we can name how much they're willing to pay a buyer's broker,
Mm-hmm.
or we can just leave it open that they're going to entertain certain percentages or flat fees. But that's my job now is representing you as a seller. I need to make sure that you understand going forward to expect these things in a contract, because you just told me you're going to bring me a buyer contract,
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably going to be listed in that contract that this buyer needs help to pay this commission. They can't pay all this stuff, even though they're required by law
Right.
now to compensate their agent. They can't afford it, and as we said, buyers, the money they have to come through already, and so when the dust settles, nothing's changed, Josh.
Right. Yeah.
Honestly, the wording changes,
Exactly.
the numbers look different, but what's probably going to transpire is the sellers are still going to pay that compensated amount for the buyer's agent and the seller's agent
Yeah. And
to make the transaction work.
Yeah, and it's not costing the seller any more money than what it would traditionally have cost. It's just
Exactly.
broken up in a little bit different way.
Right. And the reason we're making this video is we want to calm fears.
Yeah.
Because there's been false information on the news, and I don't want to go into details, but there's been things said that were honestly not true. We want to make sure that you're not that you don't have the wrong information,
Mm-hmm.
and that at the end of the day things are not changing much. We're still going to bring the positive part is, I think, is the relationship between the buyer and their agent. Now it's going to be a more of a solid one, more so like a listing agent.
Mm-hmm.
When I list a house, I'm in contact with my sellers
Absolutely.
all the time. How many showings have we had? What's this? And now we're going to be obligated. We've always been obligated, but now it's in writing.
It's in writing.
Here's what I'm doing for my buyer.
More transparency.
More transparent, and I want to make sure my buyer's getting the best service they can.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that goes into this.
Yes.
House hunting, it may seem simple on the surface of getting on Zillow, Realtor.com, or wherever you want to go. But there's so many things behind.
There's a lot
and
behind the scene work that goes on.
that you need to
Yeah.
know that we can help you, obtain the information that you need to make the right decision.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is, as a buyer agent dealing with the listing agent, them dealing with each other one-on-one to make sure both parties are getting the representation that they
Yes,
need.
exactly. That's absolutely correct. Well, it seems like we've got a good handle on what's the changes.
Right.
We're well armed and educated about how things has to be moving forward.
Yep.
We would love to have you experience what quality representation would look like firsthand. We're all of our 5-star reviews, all the years in business with
Right.
no complaints against us. I think is a testament to the quality that us as full-time real estate professionals can provide to you as either a buyer or a seller.
Yeah.
you know.
There's a reason Western Mountaineer Real Estate's been the number one
Yeah.
agency in sales and listings for
Absolutely.
the last 3-4 years, and
Exactly.
in the top 3 for the last 7-8
Oh,
years that I've been here. So we try to do things the right way, and we appreciate all of our clients out there.
Yes.
You guys are what make us. Without our awesome clients,
Yeah.
we would never be here, because your referrals mean the world to us.
It really
And
does.
Josh and I are both blessed to do what we do.
Yeah.
It's they say if you love your job, you never work a day of your life,
Exactly.
and I'm telling you,
Exactly.
we
Yeah.
and not that it's some days are long,
Definitely.
and some weekends are long, and evenings are long, but we enjoy it, and it's we love serving you and doing what we can to help that big transaction in your
Yeah,
life,
it's
because
huge.
we do this every day.
Right.
And most buyers and sellers do this a couple times in their life.
Mhm.
So even if you did this 10 years ago, it can be challenging
Yeah.
to think about it, and it's scary. So this is our first podcast, and we plan to come back and do some more down the road. We have a variety of topics we'd like to look at. If you guys have questions, you'd like a podcast on something that you would like for us to discuss,
Mhm.
we'd love to hear that. Our phone numbers are right here on the screen. Feel free to call us. You can get a hold of us day and night. If you text me in the middle of the night, I'll answer you first thing in the morning. And it's
That's it.
we're anxious to hear back from you, and appreciate your time. And anything else, Josh?
No, yeah, I would just echo that. Any questions at all, just reach out to us, drop us a note. We'd be more than happy to take really good care of you
All
guys.
right, we thank you. Mention that Kenny Bryan is our broker, and we are located at 1406 Harper Road, Beckley, West Virginia, 25801. Look forward to see you guys again. Thank you so much for your time.
Have a great one.